The Lost Empire of Tartaria, a hidden history, unveiled. We've been hearing and seeing a lot about Tartaria recently on TikTok and YouTube, and wanted to find out more about this. So we did some research to get to the bottom of it, and it turns out there's a lot more we hadn't heard about. What if I told you that many of the grand monuments of our world, the soaring cathedrals, the stately capitals, even stretches of ancient walls, were not built by the civilizations we think did it, but by an advanced empire erased from history just a century and a half ago? It sounds impossible, yet many people online are convinced of an alternative past in which a civilization called Tartaria once spanned the globe. In this shadowy theory, a cataclysmic event buried entire cities in mud, and powerful forces scrubbed Tartaria from our history books, leaving behind only puzzling architectural clues. When a world-famous cathedral burned in 2019, most mourned a tragic accident. But believers saw something else, the deliberate destruction of a Tartarian masterpiece. Welcome to one of the internet's eeriest conspiracy theories. In this video, we'll venture into the mystery of the Tartarian Empire. What is Tartaria supposed to be, and what do its believers claim? We'll examine the evidence they point to, the architectural anomalies, the so-called mud flood and orphan trains, the old maps and odd historical references. Then, we'll hear the mainstream view to understand why historians, architects, and geologists reject the Tartaria narrative. Finally, we'll explore why this theory resonates today, how it spread across social media, and what this modern myth can teach us about history, the control of narratives, and the power of curiosity. Prepare to question what you think you know. Over the next 20 minutes, we'll travel from the gilded halls of old-world expositions to muddy underground tunnels, from antique maps to viral clips, searching for the truth or the myth of Tartaria. Was there really a lost global empire hidden beneath our streets? Or are we seeing phantoms in the archives? Let's dig in, literally, into the Tartarian mystery. What is Tartaria supposed to be? The theory in a nutshell. Tartary was, in historical usage, a broad label European mapmakers applied to Central Asia and Siberia for centuries. On maps from the 16th to the 18th century, you'll find Great Tartary spread across vast parts of Asia. According to standard history, it was never a single empire, more a catch-all for diverse peoples and lands beyond the familiar European world. As geography improved, the umbrella term faded, replaced by specific names. Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Siberia, and Tartary slipped into obscurity. Believers argue there's more to it. In the Tartarian Empire theory, Tartaria was a highly advanced, worldwide civilization that endured into the 18th or 19th century, boasting monumental architecture, sophisticated technology, and, in some tellings, even a population of giants. They claim Tartaria's builders raised the impressive old-world structures we attribute to other cultures, ornate capitol buildings, sprawling exhibition halls, elaborate castles, bridges, and cathedrals. In this view, Tartaria was a Golden Age civilization, possibly more advanced than our own in certain ways, deliberately wiped from modern memory. How could a massive empire vanish? Enthusiasts point to a cataclysmic mud flood. Sometime in the 1800s, they say, a mysterious worldwide disaster buried cities and toppled Tartarian society. Afterward, new powers rose, empires and young republics, and reset history. According to the theory, the record was rewritten. Libraries purged, maps altered, textbooks edited, and troublesome buildings demolished or quietly assigned new construction dates. The result, a cover-up of cosmic proportions. Core claims, as believers tell them. A lost global empire. Tartaria was a sprawling, technologically advanced civilization dominating much of the world into the 1800s, often imagined with free energy, wireless power, and grand urban centers. The mud flood reset. A global catastrophe buried Tartarian cities under layers of mud. Survivors repopulated the ruins. New regimes rewrote the past. Advanced Old World tech. Decorative domes, spires, and metalwork on historic buildings are interpreted as parts of energy systems, antennas, or resonators. Evidence, believers say, of free energy tech. Hidden in plain sight. Many grand 18th and 19th century buildings are reframed as Tartarian structures, repurposed by later powers and given false dates. Suppressed maps and records. Older maps and encyclopedias referencing Tartary are held up as proof it was once recognized. A Cold War memo is cited as evidence that history was officially falsified, according to those who promote the theory. Orphan trains and lost children. Real 19th century practices, like relocating orphans from crowded cities to foster homes, are recast as the repopulation of lands after Tartaria's fall. It's an intoxicating idea, an Atlantis not beneath the sea, but beneath our cities, our basements and foundations. But what do believers show as evidence? Clues and evidence. Inside the Tartarian theory, believers say the clues are everywhere, hiding in plain sight, if you know how to look. They scour old photographs, antique maps, city plans, and building facades. Here are the motifs that recur again and again. Architectural anomalies. Who really built this? The grandest fuel for the theory is architecture. Walk through a 19th century civic building, towering ceilings, colossal doors, lavish stonework. Enthusiasts ask, could societies of horse-drawn carriages really build at this scale and precision? They point to domes and spires in capitals across continents and argue the similarities are too striking to be coincidental fashion, hinting instead at a unified aesthetic from a single empire. Star forts. These striking star-shaped fortifications dot the world, Europe, the Americas, Asia, and beyond. Historians describe them as Renaissance to industrial era military designs optimized for cannon warfare. Believers see something else, a planetary lattice of geometric hubs, energy nodes in a global grid. The crisp symmetry, the repetition across continents, the sheer number of sites, these feed the sense of a hidden system. Giant-scale details, oversized doors and windows, staircases with risers too tall for comfort, cavernous halls. Some believers propose that Tartarians were physically larger, hence the scale. Others suggest the features served acoustic or energetic functions. Either way, the grandeur feels like a signature of a different order of builders. Erasure by demolition. Why are so many exquisite early 20th century structures gone? Believers point to famous demolitions, grand stations, monumental towers, exhibition palaces, and recast them as deliberate acts to erase Tartarian remnants. The mud flood, buried cities, buried history. Central to the legend is the mud flood, a sudden deluge of earth and slurry that allegedly smothered cities up to their second or third stories. Half-buried windows and doors. In many older districts, basement windows peak from sidewalk level. Bricked-up arches sit below grade. Believers compile these as signatures of a sudden rise in ground level. Raised streets and undergrounds. Real urban projects, raising Chicago streets in the mid-1800s, regrading and building over old sidewalks in Seattle, are reinterpreted as cover stories, not civic engineering, but evidence of a buried civilization. Empty-looking old photos. Early city photographs often show muddy streets, few people, and monumental buildings looming over sparse activity. Believers read these as snapshots of reoccupation after a die-off. Cities inherited, not built. Foundations that go too deep. Renovations exposing deep substructures, crypts, vaults, archways, are reframed as lower floors of buried Tartarian buildings. Historical oddities. Maps, memos, and the Great Cover-Up. Old maps. Antique atlases label vast regions Tartary or Great Tartary. To believers, these are not vague exonyms, but traces of a political reality, cartographic echoes of a suppressed state. The memo. A mid-20th century document is often quoted for the line that Tartarian history was to be rewritten. Let us be frank, falsified, according to those who promote the theory. For believers, the phrasing is a smoking gun, official acknowledgement of historical manipulation. World's Fairs, the breathtaking White City of 1893 in Chicago, the sparkling palaces and the Tower of Jewels in 1915 San Francisco, officially temporary plaster palaces built to awe visitors, then dismantled. Believers argue these were inherited Tartarian structures, showcased and then removed to maintain the fiction of modern construction timelines. Wars as cleanup. Bombing campaigns that leveled historic cores. Dresden, sections of London, and beyond are reframed as finishing the job of erasing Tartarian architecture under the fog of war. Orphan trains and missing populations. Between the 1850s and 1920s, large numbers of orphans were relocated from crowded cities to rural homes. Believers connect this to a post-cataclysm world, a great repopulation effort dispersing the surviving children of Tartaria, their lineage folded into a new order. Even infant incubator exhibits at early 20th century fairs are braided into the narrative as signs of industrial-scale care for a suddenly parentless generation. In short, the believer's case stitches disparate puzzles, ornate architecture, buried basements, stark old photographs, antique maps, and social upheavals into a single sweeping explanation. There was an advanced global civilization here recently, and someone doesn't want you to know. The mainstream perspective, history, science, and debunking Tartaria. Now we step into the light of conventional scholarship. How do historians, archaeologists, architects, and geologists respond? Tartary versus Tartaria. A name, not an empire. The consensus is straightforward. Tartary was a geographical label, not a unified state. The peoples of Inner Asia, Kazakhs, Tatars, Mongols, Manchus, and more, maintained distinct polities with well-documented histories. Detailed records of the 18th and 19th centuries imperial expansion, diplomatic reports, missionary accounts, local chronicles leave no blank space where a secret high-tech empire could hide. Architecture explained. Human skill, not hidden tech. Grand buildings. The 18th to 19th centuries saw explosive advances in engineering and materials. Neoclassical, Beaux-Arts, and Gothic revival styles embraced monumentality. Iron, steel, and mass-produced glass enabled vast spans and domes. Construction records, blueprints, and photographs exist for these projects. Shared styles across continents. Domes and colonnades in the Americas, Europe, and parts of Asia reflect cultural exchange, colonial influence, and fashionable imitation, not proof of a single empire. Star forts. Military historians trace bastioned fortifications to specific innovations in artillery warfare. Treatises, plans, and correspondence document their design logic. As artillery evolved, these forts became obsolete, hence the timeline. Giant doors, tall ceilings, practical and symbolic. Ventilation and thermal comfort in large halls, carriage access, processional scale, and the politics of awe. No giants required. Demolitions. The loss of beloved landmarks is well documented as the product of economics, modernist planning, and short-sighted development, ironically fueling the preservation movement. No mud flood. Geology and records don't support it. A global layer of 19th century mud would leave a clear, datable signature. It doesn't appear. What does appear are ordinary processes. Raised grades. Cities altered street levels to improve drainage and sanitation. They regraded after fires. They paved and repaved, burying areaways and basement windows. Archaeological layering. Ancient and early modern cities often built atop their own remains. Deep foundations, vaults, and substructures are typical, not mysterious. Photography artifacts. Long exposures explain empty-looking photos. Unpaved muddy streets were common before modern roadways. Continuity of sources. Newspapers, diaries, and civic records from the era show no global cataclysm. Instead, they record the slow, messy business of urbanization. Orphans and populations. Tragedy without conspiracy. The orphan trains were responses to urban poverty, disease, and social reform movements. Their roots, organizers, and outcomes are extensively documented. Demographic data show steady population growth through the 19th century. No global die-off that a civilizational reset would imply. Why historians reject the Tartaria narrative. The mundane explanations are backed by documents, plans, photographs, geology, and demography. The theory prefers a single dramatic answer over hundreds of simpler, evidenced ones. Resonance and relevance. Why Tartaria captivates people today. If mainstream evidence contradicts the theory, why does it keep spreading? The answer lives not in the 1800s, but in us. The allure of hidden history. We're drawn to mysteries. Tartaria promises a puzzle anyone can investigate. Find clues in maps, facades, and photos. Expose the lie. Join a community of sleuths. It's visually potent. Domes, spires, sepia streets, and tailor-made for short, arresting videos that feel like revelations. Distrust in official narratives. We live amid information overload and institutional skepticism. History is written by the victors is a powerful hook. For some, Tartaria validates a broader suspicion. If the present feels manipulated, maybe the past was too. According to researchers who've examined online ecosystems, this theory often overlaps with other conspiratorial communities, serving as a relatively soft entry point. Nostalgia and aesthetics. There's a palpable longing in the air for craftsmanship, ornament, and a sense of grandeur. Tartaria taps into that, a paradise lost, free energy, unified purpose, cities of beauty. It reframes today's concrete and glass as a fall from grace, and offers a story in which the beauty we miss was real and stolen. Community and creativity. Tartaria is open-source myth-making. There's no single orthodox text. Participants remix giants, energy grids, and lost cities into new mosaics. That collaborative creativity builds belonging and momentum. Some approach it sincerely. Others treat it as eerie aesthetic or speculative fiction. Either way, it thrives. Conclusion: the power of curiosity and a past that never was. We've walked the labyrinth of Tartaria, a sweeping claim of a hidden global empire and advanced technology, the evidence in stone and mud, and the mainstream explanations that unwind each thread. On balance, Tartaria is a modern myth, a mirror of our era's anxieties and desires more than a record of the 19th century. It flourishes because it's cinematic, communal, and tantalizing, because it lets us play detective and rebel at once. But there's a lesson here that's bigger than debunking. Curiosity is a double-edged blade. It can uncover truth, or carve a path into fantasy. The antidote is not to dampen wonder, but to pair it with method, to ask for sources, for context, for mechanisms, to weigh the ordinary before leaping to the extraordinary. And yet, the next time you pass a weathered facade or descend into an old basement, you may still feel it, that prickle of mystery. What else lies beneath? What stories did these walls once tell? Those questions are not conspiratorial. They're human. They're the spark that drives archaeology, history, and science. So perhaps the most haunting, useful question Tartaria leaves us with is this: if an entire chapter of human history were hidden, how would we know? The answer is not with whispers and vibes, but with spades and archives. Not with vibes and virality, but with evidence checked and rechecked. Keep your wonder. Sharpen your skepticism. There are genuine secrets in the ground and in the stacks, waiting not for a myth, but for a mind willing to ask hard questions and follow where the proof leads. As the lights fade, we leave you with a final thought. The past is never finished. It is layered, revised, and rediscovered. And sometimes, when you stand before a grand old building at twilight, it's okay to let the mystery breathe. Then step closer and start reading the stones. Let us know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us again for more unexplained and unknown here on Subliminal Tapes.